My name is Ben Waxman. I am the President and CEO of International Education Advantage, also known as Intead. Just a quick housekeeping note, we are using this platform to do our webinar. We've used it before and it's worked very, very well. Every once in a while there is a drop-off that the internet connection kind of falls off, and within about 30 seconds it does come back, and I just want you to be patient with that. If it happens, we've done it a number of times before and we've been fine. But if something drops off, just be patient. It should reinitiate within about 30 seconds. With that, let me just mention quickly what Intead is. If you're not familiar with us, we do have a lot of friends out there in the audience, people who have been with us just recently down in Miami at the ICEF and AIRC conferences. And so welcome, nice to have you with us again. And there are those of you who are new to us. We are a marketing agency that focuses on helping universities brand themselves internationally. We do a lot of digital. We're very into data, as you'll see in a few minutes. And you can find out plenty more about us on our website. We publish a blog weekly on this topic and have for the past 7 years. And it's got a wealth of information. Hopefully you're already subscribers to that. So with that, we have about 30 minutes that we're going to take right now to go through a slide deck. This is the second time we've given this webinar, prompted by those in our little niche industry here of global branding and international student recruiting, and the concerns that have come up since the election, where there is a new political landscape here in the US. With Brexit, there's a new political landscape in the UK. And so there is concern that, you know, things have changed and we may need to market ourselves differently, given all of that. So we put together some slides to give perspective and have a few suggestions toward the end. I should mention also that FPP Edumedia is here. I believe they have joined the webinar as well. Giulio Ronchetti is president of FPP Edumedia, and he and his team were very helpful in the work we are presenting here with a lot of great data that can help us. They have a very powerful student database of, at this point, I believe, over 1.6 million prospective international students. And without that, we would not have the insights that we do. Further, we have the slides that will be available to you at the end of this. We will send them out to everybody who's here. And we also will provide a link to the webinar online so that you can share it with colleagues if you find that would be helpful. And with that, let's move into what it is we're going to talk about. And so where I want to go with this is these 4 topics: a framework for this discussion, just setting the stage. We'll talk about what we know and the data that's available to us. We'll talk about our recommendations for how we approach the new landscape, and we will finish up with what we think we can learn and what we wish we knew, because there's always more information out there that would be helpful. And so let's talk about the framework for this discussion. This is not about politics per se. This is about an approach to marketing strategy, marketing processes and tactics, messaging. We're not here to gloat or commiserate about what has transpired with the election. We're not about giving therapy, despite the fact that we probably all need therapy at one point or another. As I mentioned, what everyone will get is the opportunity to ask questions along the way. Elaine Santoyo Goldman is here to moderate this, and we'll see your questions and post them so that I can see them. And I will try and answer everything that comes up. Please ask your questions along the way, and if you want to save them for the end, that's fine too. You will get the slide deck and you'll get a link to the webinar. So let's get right into it in terms of what we know. And so the next set of slides is really a very, very condensed set of our presentations that we give at conferences about digital marketing internationally. And so I want to just talk about what we actually know works. And again, we're not going into detail on these things. And there's a lot more behind each one of these slides, but it's just the best and brightest of what we tell people about, or institutions about how to do effective global marketing. And the first one is about creating deliberate relationships. whether it's an agent network or it's through in-country relationships that you have through college fairs, with specific international high schools. Building a global network takes time and deliberate thought, and very often institutions that are just starting out do this very accidentally. They happen to have 15 or 50 or even 150 international students on campus, but it's all very accidental. And what we know works when you're trying to scale is doing this very intentionally, having a plan. And when you have that plan, we know that you should have a holistic approach. And that means that your digital marketing and your offline strategy, your fairs and your print ads and list buys, all the things that you do, your partner or agent network, they need to be married. They need to feed each other. If they're working in isolation, that's really not going to help you scale. We also know that you need to be mobile friendly. And so in 2014, the number of people accessing the web via mobile devices exceeded those on desktop or laptop. A lot of this is attributable to China and India, where you have large rural populations that don't have computers, but they do have cell phones and smartphones. And so it's very important that the digital marketing that you're doing be mobile friendly. And that's hard to do around the world. And so at Intead, we do a lot of research and we publish these tools. We have something called Intead Index, which you can download from our website for free, which has all of these decision grids about what mobile tools, what social media, what digital marketing avenues, or on the ground avenues work best in different parts of the world. And so I hope you're making use of that. There are free resources to help you make sense of a fairly complex process of global marketing. What we also know is as an institution, you need to be nimble. And this, right, it's really hard to do as an institution. But when things come up globally or within your country, within the US, it's important to be able to react quickly with digital marketing, social media posts that capitalize on what's happening and how that is related to the academic offerings you have and the campus environment you have. And so you can really make use of that kind of what's happening in the world to feed your digital marketing. It means that you have to act quickly and not just have a rote marketing plan that can't be flexible. And to that end, when you're talking about marketing plans, you need to have creative, engaging content. If you don't have that, you are like so many other schools sending out long emails full of text and links to your housing options, to your visa process, to all of these different elements of what international students need to know. But by and large, those emails are being deleted because they're not engaging. And so it's important to have a creative team thinking about how do we capture their attention? How do we stand above everybody else and actually show off what we have to offer? And so when people think about marketing, they always think about the creative side and how fun ad development is and the ads that are available, getting your team to brainstorm fun things. But what's behind that is really important, and that is that a good marketing program, a scalable marketing program, has systems in place, processes that are repeatable, trackable, and if you don't have those kinds of tools, you're not going to be able to scale. So again, it's a very deliberate process. And so when we talk about that here at Intead, we talk about the market research that tells us which countries, which regions are going to resonate with what we have to offer at one institution or another. We talk about the creative process of developing influential messaging and content. We talk about the content dissemination tools and those tracking tools that let us know what's working and which of our marketing dollars were effective and which were not, so that we can adjust as we go forward. And that really leads to the scaled enrollment we're seeking, as long as you have a strong marketing platform with experienced staff. And so some schools have that internally, and some look to outsource the staffing of these kinds of things. And as you're building that reliable marketing system, again, I'm going through this stuff really fast. So if there's something I need to slow down about, feel free to weigh in with a question, and Elaine will make sure I see it. But we talk about having reliable marketing systems, from your email marketing to your website with analytics, the mobile tools, publishing, social media. All of these elements are important. And we talk about having a feedback loop so that as you're putting your content out, you have the analytics to look at it, and that instructs you about which content you want to repeat and which you want to retire. And you use different tools like microsites and email marketing and things like that to get those messages out there. And so marketing automation is really an essential part of this. And there are a lot of different systems that allow you to do this kind of thing. We just did a presentation down at AIRC and at ISEF about CRM tools and marketing automation tools. And actually, we just published a CRM guide, which is downloadable from our website as well. A lot of you have already gotten that from us. And again, it's free. We do all of these things to give you as much capacity as possible on your own. But with marketing automation, this is a very simplified version, but you're able to launch those email campaigns and track what is being viewed and what is not, and that helps you refine your nurturing email workflows and your marketing approach. And in terms of informing that marketing approach, we use a lot of data. And these are some of the key data sources we use, from IIE Open Doors to Google Analytics and LinkedIn. iGraduate is a great source of information. And we also look at internal sources. We like to do admitted, not enrolled surveys to understand why a student was attracted to you, actually took the time to apply, you actually admitted them, and then they chose something else, right? And why is that? Was it financial? Was it something about a family illness that kept them home? We want to understand what makes them choose one path or another. We do student focus groups, tracking incomplete applications, tracking lead engagements, things like that. And so thinking about data points that can inform where we are now. And so there was a point, many of you probably remember, back in 2009, 2010, where Australia had some racial violence against Indian students. And it was really horrific. And it made national headlines and then international headlines. And the result of that, beyond the pain and suffering on a human level, was that 600,000 international students studying in Australia dropped to 485,000. It's a pretty dramatic drop-off. And that meant the loss of jobs, the loss of institutions. It really was a very significant event in Australia. And today, remember, they were at 600,000, they dropped to 485. Today, they've recovered. They're back at 645,000 international students. Some of the primary actions they took had to do with streamlining visa processes, improving job eligibility, and investing heavily in foreign university partnerships as a pathway to students coming to Australia. So they took some very deliberate legislative actions that, as I think about the US political climate, are likely not, I don't see them happening here. Could be wrong about that, but indications are not suggesting to me that we are going to make it easier for international students to come to the US and make them more able to get jobs, at least not right now. And so these are things to consider. This is a historical point in time where it gives us perspective on what we could be facing, and I will talk more about that shortly. Let's look at the data from the work we did with FBP Edumedia, where we reached out to 1.2 million students. We gave them a 14-question survey. We got 40,000 responses in just 7 days, which is a really significant amount of data. And we loved that, and we dove into that. 97% of those responses came from the 20 countries you see on the screen right now. Again, you will get these slides, so you'll be able to look at this in more detail. So one of the questions we asked on the survey was about student inclination. We asked, and this is back in February of 2016, if one person or another were elected to the presidency in the US, would you be more or less inclined to study here? And again, it's important to note, this is inclination. This is not, this is what I plan to do. This is February 2016. This is what I think at this time. And so what we found was that 60%, and this surprised us, 60% of the respondents said they were less inclined to study in the US if Donald Trump were elected president. It's 3.8, roughly 4% said they would be less inclined if Hillary Clinton were elected president. Pretty significant disparity, right? So we continued on and thought, well, let's look at the IIE data about a student being worth about $31,000. So the two of these candidates represent a significant amount of money. Clearly, the 60% figure translates to a much bigger economic loss for the US. Again, if all 60% that said they weren't going to come actually didn't come. We know that's not going to happen. But this is just a useful data point to consider. The reality is, what if 2% or 5% or 10% actually act on this inclination? What are the financial ramifications of that for the country and for your institution in particular? And we're going to look at a few regions here and think about that. So if you think about Mexico versus Thailand, Mexico, not surprisingly, was at the top of the chart with 80% disinclined to come to the US if Donald Trump were elected president, where Thailand was around 25%. Still a significant number, but not the 80% in Mexico. If we dive a little bit deeper into Latin America, you can see that the percentages differ by different country, but overall, where every country was 50%-ish or higher. That's a lot of students to lose from Brazil, from Panama, Colombia, and certainly Mexico. And again, what if there were just a 5% drop off from Mexico or Colombia? What is the impact to your institution? What would you do if you were presenting this information to your provost or your president? And we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's see, on your next slide. So then if you look at another region, Southeast Asia, you can see that the numbers are lower, but still significant, where India is around 40%, Thailand around 25%, Malaysia down around 50, 51, or up around 50, 51. And so, my mouse is not doing exactly what I want. So now that you have some perspective on the research we did and the findings we had, again, about inclination, not necessarily action, how do we approach this? What do we do? From a strategic point of view, from an operational point of view, from a marketing point of view, and then what kind of immediate needs do we have? So this is what I will talk about for the next few minutes, and we will have time for questions at the end. Strategically, what we think needs to happen is this conversation with your senior leadership. What are the financial realities that could strike your institution? And here's where I don't need to scare people or predict doom or anything else, but like that Australian event, and this is part of what we talked about at the ERC conference at our presentation there, what if an incident like Ferguson, Missouri were to happen again here in the US? Over the next 4 years, is it possible that an incident could happen that brings out a significant police force response where there might be riots, there might be just really significant international headlines? Is that a foreseeable future event? And if you think that that could happen again, and personally I do think that as a nation we are fractured right now and that kind of thing could happen, what happens with those international headlines and what happens with student desire to study here, their sense of being welcomed by our country, their concerns and their parents' concerns for their safety, even if it is an isolated event in just one city, even if it is representative of things that are more across the country, there are concerns there. And so if that event were to happen, I could see some of this inclination that we've just looked at converting to actual action. And so meeting with your senior leadership and presenting some of this information and saying, let's be realistic, what if there were a 2%, a 5%, a 10% drop off in international students from these regions? What would be the financial ramifications for us, my ability as senior international officer or what have you, to actually meet the targets that we have? How are we going to deal with that? Let's be prepared. And so there are these steps we recommend you take to align your internal stakeholders, get people to understand the challenges you face, and have a marketing plan to deal with an eventual crisis. And then also proactively get involved in advocacy, where there are a lot of institutions across the country that help us, from NAFSA to ACE to AIEA to independent sector. All of these groups are there to, and there are others that I'm not mentioning, but they're there to help us advocate at the federal and the local level. And I think it's really important that we talk about the export that education is for our country and the revenue stream, and how different policies and approaches affect your ability to operate as an institution here in the US. And if we are not advocating for ourselves as a group and loudly, certainly no one else is going to do that for us. So I think playing a role in these agencies and these associations is really important today, and tapping your connections to local leadership as well. Operationally, setting up international student scholarships. I know this is something that can take quite a bit of time at a policy level at an institution, but if you consider the ramifications of a small percentage drop-off of international students, it may be wise to invest a pool of scholarship dollars to stem that loss. It may be a strategic use of funds that would be wise. And so I think that conversation is something that should be started and considered, evaluated for your institution. I also think there's a need to invest more in international student services, that you likely have already received a flurry of phone calls or drop-ins from your current international students, possibly from parents. Certainly among our client set, we have heard the stories of this happening. And we have heard of students actually who are on prospect lists for you, and they're part of your email stream, and they're actually writing back when they get your emails saying, I'm not interested in studying in the US anymore. These are somewhat isolated events, one-off email we've seen from our various marketing efforts, but we've never seen that before, where students get one of our prospective student emails that we do for one of our clients or another, and the response is, I used to consider the US as a place to study. I would never do that now. That's a new message to get back. So investing in the international student services, because students need their hands held a little bit more. They have concerns, especially if an incident were to happen in the country. They're going to have concerns about their safety, and their parents are going to be concerned. So having the bandwidth to be able to support them and having a plan. And so in terms of marketing approach, we think about timing, making sure that your marketing appears authentic compared to national news. If big things are happening that say the US is not a welcome place right now, coming out with your positive news about how great studying on your campus is and how wonderful and harmonious everyone is there may not play well. You know, you might need to let things kind of quiet down a little bit before you push that campaign out. But I would tell you that it is very important that the promotions you do. Hi there, I think we just lost the connection, and I believe it is back. Looks like everybody is still here. So I think we were just talking about strategic, operational, and marketing approach. So talking about making sure that your promotions are positive, that at this point, nothing really has changed about how great your institution is to create a welcoming environment, to create a great academic environment. All of these things that made you terrific as a destination before are still there and need to be promoted. And there's nothing you need to do to apologize for anything or address anything that has to be negative or combating a negative. Right now, I think it's really important to just put positive messages out about how great it is to study in the US, and your institution is a fantastic community to do just that. And making sure that that jives with what's going on nationally. I think about forming partnerships and coalitions, and there's one of those that has already started out of Temple University They have started a hashtag "You Are Welcome Here" as a social media push with video. Um, and I think this is a really nice example of communities forming out of all of this and pushing a common message. And so there are a number of videos that institutions have already created with the hashtag "You Are Welcome Here." And I think we can all kind of glom on that, and in the promotions we're doing and the social media we're doing, use that hashtag. And this is brand new. This is as of a couple of weeks ago. So we're really excited about that. I intend to blog about this, and I hope that other institutions that have promotional videos and other social media going out might adopt this hashtag and use that, pushing out to the international community that this is a great place to study. Segmenting your international audiences always, making sure that you're investing in areas that make the most sense for your institution. So don't try to promote yourself in a region that they just don't resonate with what your academic or geographic offering has. And we're almost wrapping it up here, and we have about 5 minutes left, unless people can stay just a little bit longer. Talking about messaging, fine-tuning your international messaging, considering your parents' messaging as well. This is a critical audience right now, making sure that you're staying positive, focused on what you have to offer, and that, in fact, if people thought that the US was a pro-business climate before, it certainly is even more of a pro-business climate now. What a great place to study business, given all the changes and economic issues that are going on. So that is one place where you might see something that you can promote in a slightly different way than you might have in the past. Immediate needs, talking points for your academic community. Because there are others, you've probably already experienced this at this point, other leaders on campus who want talking points to know how to address this. Many university presidents have put out letters to the community, letters to alumni, saying we are a welcoming environment, we're a safe place to study, and we are just so excited to be doing what we do. Again, not necessarily needing to drone about negative stuff, but focusing on the positive and reinforcing the positive that you've got. But not saying things that are inauthentic, because I think your prospective student audiences will see right through that. If you're painting a beautiful, happy place while the news is showing headlines of disaster, that's not going to play well. So again, that goes back to timing. Focus your academic and your career, focus on your academic and career advantages. This has not changed. We're always here pushing for our clients to focus on the outcomes of studying at your institution. What kind of careers do your alumni get to? And specifically your international students. Where are they now? Tell those positive stories. And video is absolutely the best way to do this. It really resonates and it's very shareable, right? So one student reached is going to share that with their friends if they believe in what you're saying. So this takes us through most of our presentation. This date on this slide is actually wrong. It's from our last presentation that we will be doing another survey with FPP Edumedia. They have a database now of 1.6, not 1.2 million. And we'd love to see the questions you want answered. And so if you'd like to participate in this, send your inquiries, send your thoughts to us at info@intead.com, and we will incorporate questions into the next student survey. I will say that we've already seen results of a number of surveys saying that students are still inclined to come to the US because it is the best place to study in their minds. It is still top of the list. And so that inclination to not come here may not materialize at all. And at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of anecdotal and research-based evidence of a small percentage of students saying, no, thought about it, now I'm going to Canada or Australia or maybe UK instead, but the US is off my list. So it's still, we're not sure, but my concern is that we will see the first dip in student mobility to the US that we will have seen for a decade. And this is what I think is coming. And those institutions that have deliberate marketing plans will not suffer nearly as much as those that don't. If you're interested in these issues and you want to dive in deeper, this is a shameless plug. We do have a conference that's coming up in January in San Diego that will dive into what works where. We have a great lineup of speakers, and we hope you'll register. It's not a terribly expensive conference to come to. We priced it low on purpose. You can see on your screen the URL, isrbootcamp.org. We're doing this with CGAC. We're really excited about it, and it will be very tactical. We will discuss strategy a little bit, and then we're going straight into really what works where, and we will have true professionals from the field talking about their experience in different regions. And the other thing that you can do to get more information is look to our website, where if you're familiar with us, we have a lot of publications that are all free and podcasts as well, talking about what's happening in the field. The podcasts are interviews with leaders in the field that I think you'll find really, really insightful. And with that, we are wrapped up at 32 minutes, so kept it to half an hour essentially. And if you have questions, I'm happy to try and answer those. You can use the chat window to let us know if there's anything out there. It looks like we still have a full host of people who started with us. So I thank you for sticking with me. You can also always email me, and I'm happy to engage with specific questions you might have about your institution. I encourage everyone to use the hashtag, "You are welcome here." And if we produce enough videos over the next 6 to 12 months that say that, I think it'll be a pretty powerful message. With that, I don't think we have any questions this time. Last time we had a lot. This time it's not. So I thank you for coming, and I'll let you get back to your day. I'll look for your emails. And thank you very much.